Judge, while I'm working on that, if you'd like to clear conflicts, go right ahead.
Okay, for the scoring panelists, look at if you haven't already, look at the names on the rosters or on your screen and let us know if you see any names or I guess there are a few faces there of people that you know that are participating today. And if so, let the courtroom monitor know and me as well. I have done that and I don't see any names that ring any bells with me. But if each of you could answer yes or no of the panelists, that would be good.
No conflicts on my part.
No conflicts for me. Thank you.
Okay, I think we're clear on conflicts.
Judge, 1 second. We did find out that we lost. Let me verify that we're gonna need to get another panelist in here if we can't get Michael back. I do have somebody trying to come in.
That may be Michael.
Hello, Your Honor. My apologies for being late. I could not find the link for some reason. The website wasn't updating for me.
Thank you, Maddox. Are you with Tulip or Lily?
You know what? Actually, I think I just joined the wrong courtroom. That's fun too. I am on Team Iris, so I will see y'all later.
Sage, I think you're in courtroom 1.
Nice chatting with you.
Oh, all right. Oh, and hello, Your Honor. Nice to see you again today.
Yes.
Have a good trial, all of you. Bye.
Same to you. Are we getting Michael back?
I have let the committee know that we've lost a panelist and they will either be sending us someone new or finding out what's going on with Michael. Please give us 1 second.
Okay.
Okay, Michael has joined us again. If Michael, once he joins us, can confirm that he has no conflicts. I'm then being told we are waiting on a conflict check in one other courtroom, and then we can get started. Michael, is everything up and running again for you?
Yeah, yes, I had a power outage, a very inopportune time, but it looks like we're okay now and hopefully no further problems.
Not a problem, Michael. If you could take a look at the students that are here with us today and verify that you have no conflicts for the judge, we can then move on.
I have no conflicts.
Thank you, Judge. All other courtrooms have passed conflict checks, so we can get started.
Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. This is round 3 of the Denver Regional Tournament for the Colorado Bar Association High School Mock Trial Tournament. I am David Arkell. I'll be your judge this afternoon. Very briefly, I'm not a real judge. I'm a practicing attorney. I do construction law, and I volunteered as starting as a coach long ago, and then as volunteered as a presiding judge after my son left the program after he graduated from high school. I do it because I enjoy it. This is a great program. I'm happy to contribute a little bit as a presiding judge, both for the regional tournaments and the state tournaments. But lest anybody accuse me of anything wrongful, I'm not a real judge. We are supposed to, let me introduce the panelists to you. Let me see, we have Avery Lair, we have Josh Franklin, and we have Michael Bello. Have I pronounced all your names correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
All right, thank you. I will give only an abbreviated listing of preliminary matters from my standpoint, because I'm sure you've heard all of these. But one thing that is important that I want you to pay attention to is in your presentations, be sure you keep track of your time. You don't want to hear stop from your timekeeper in the middle of a syllable of your killer cross-examination question. So please be aware of the time. If you go over your time, the panelists have the option to reduce your score slightly for that. So please watch the time and comply with your limits. Let's go through the swearing in process now. Let me start with the team members. Team members, please raise your right hands. And those that I can't see, I'll take it on faith that you've raised your right hands. Team members, do you promise that the presentation you're about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and rules of the mock trial competition?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. And gallery members, the people who would be in the gallery, but we're being on Zoom, raise your right hands, please. Do you promise to represent yourselves as positive role models and to behave in a manner that exemplifies ethical and professional sportsmanship during and after this mock trial round? I'll take that as a yes. Scoring panelists, please raise your right hands. Do you promise to adjudicate this mock trial competition as fairly and objectively as possible in accordance with the facts, procedures, and rules of mock trial competition.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, thank you. And finally, witnesses, would you please raise your right hands? Do you promise that the testimony you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts, procedures, and rules of the mock trial competition?
Yes.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, thank you.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Does the plaintiff have any preliminary matters to bring before the court?
Yes, Your Honor. We have a set of preliminary matters we would like to discuss. First of all, we have two stipulated facts that we would like to admit to the court and publish to the jury. I'm going to read them out to you. The first one states that the signatures on the witness statements and all other documents are authentic. The second one states that the chain of custody for evidence is not in dispute. We would also like to verify that the jury has a copy of the exhibits with them so that we don't have to share screen if there are technical difficulties.
Okay, Ed, well, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. And then our final request is that we would like to save any time for closing to use for rebuttal.
Any objections from the defense to any of those requests?
No objections, Your Honor.
Okay, the stipulations have been or will be published to the jury. The scoring panelists in this case, what was the second one? I'm sorry.
I just wanted to verify that the jury has a copy of the exhibits. In case there's a technical difficulty and we can't share the screen. And then the last one is that we would like to request to use any save time from our closing for rebuttal.
Does the defense have a response to either of those two?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, as to the exhibits, what I would like to do, if we can, is when you bring an exhibit and present it to the witness, that I have copies of the exhibits, and as far as the jury is concerned, does each of you have a full set of the exhibits with you now?
Yes, Your Honor, and we can share the screen with them.
Well, what I'd like to do is share after the exhibit is entered, to then do a screen share with it. But before that, I'd like it not to be screen shared,
Okay.
if that's doable with the various technologies that we have in play here. Is that doable?
Yeah, that should work.
Is that okay with the defense?
Yes.
Okay. Then let's do it that way. And the screen sharing of the exhibit, once it's admitted, will be the equivalent, as far as this proceeding is concerned, of publishing it to the jury.
All right.
So when it's admitted, if it's admitted, the screen sharing, you don't have to mention or publish it separately from the screen share process.
That makes sense. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Defense, do you have any preliminary matters?
No, we do not, Your Honor.
Okay, I would like to ask, as a personal matter, I have a hearing loss, and I've had it a long time, and I have learned to some extent to read lips. And even with the hearing aids I have, it is still sometimes difficult for me to understand everything if people are wearing masks, because obviously I can't see their lips. I want to emphasize that I don't want you to accommodate that for me if you're uncomfortable not wearing a mask during your presentations. If you are uncomfortable, leave the mask on, and I will let you know if I'm having trouble discerning the words. But I would like to ask that accommodation if you are comfortable with that. If you could just keep that in mind, I would appreciate it. Let me see, I think that's the only preliminary matter that I have. Is there anything else either party or any of the panelists wishes to bring before the court before we kick this off?
I have one question, Your Honor, Michael Bello, panelist. Just to make sure I keep the names of the attorneys straight, I would like to have the name of the person, not just who their what their actual name is, if that's permissible. So it helps me as I'm doing scoring.
Yes, when we have groups in front of the camera, that is a concern. Michael, did you get a emailed copy of the rosters?
I may have, I can look for it. It's,
Michael, I sent it in that chat to you.
it didn't come up. So I tried it.
You tried to click on that link.
Let me try again. It said it
Okay,
didn't
well,
work. Yeah, it said it did not work.
Okay, I will try to type it in directly to the chat box for you then.
Or just send me an email with it and I'll open the email.
My scoring sheet doesn't look like it needs, like, I didn't know that we needed anyone's names. It just says direct examination 1, cross examination 1, and so forth. I didn't know that we needed their particular names.
Or maybe we don't. Then.
Yeah.
well, I think you do. You need the actual names of the students for scoring purposes. And as I understand it, your score sheet should be pre-populated.
That's what I thought too.
Is that true with yours, Michael?
I'm bringing it up again.
Mine just has a drop down. It says direct examination plaintiff 1, plaintiff's first witness, direct examination 2, so forth. And then there's a drop down for the score. So you just, as long as you score in order, you don't necessarily need the particular student's name. At least that was my understanding. But if we need to have them, that's fine too. That's just the scoring sheet that I have through the website.
Okay,
That's correct, Josh. That's what I'm seeing too. That's why I was concerned that it's just generic plaintiff opening statement, defense opening. If that's all we need, that's fine. I guess maybe the moderator, if she has anything else to say about that. I just want to make sure I do it correctly in real time here and don't have to go back and try to figure out who was who.
Yes, monitor is that a problem? I mean, I will ask.
Unfortunately, I have nothing to do with the score sheet, so I have no idea how those look. I would imagine if they're not requesting it, I would imagine whatever's coming up is probably correct. However, Michael, if you would like to know the names of the actual attorneys that are going to be doing each of these sections, I can definitely put those into the chat box for you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yes, you're very welcome.
Oh, sorry, Judge.
That's fine. I would second your request, though, just as a matter of procedure for attorneys. In the beginning of your direct or cross, if you could provide your real name, to introduce yourself by your real name, just so we have that information for sure. Agreeable? I guess so. Well, please do that. That, I think, helps the process. Okay, anything else before we commence? Hearing none, plaintiff, opening statement, please.
Good morning. Before I proceed, my name is Sarah Hurley. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, members of the jury, members of the council, and finally, Your Honor. Today's case is about profits over people. Now, today, we as a plaintiff have the burden of proof by the preponderance of the evidence, meaning more likely than not, to demonstrate three things: causation, negligence, and damages. My client, Dakota Weirs, is testifying today to his damages. Today, you will learn that Mr. Weirs' life was taken away from him by his non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Now, Mr. Weirs was on his way to become an accomplished pianist. People from all over town came to watch him perform at his recitals. He won numerous awards, and aside from his piano career, was an exceptional high school student. He participated in many clubs and was a member of the National Honor Society. He was also an active member of his community. He volunteered, and he even took up a landscaping job just to do something he enjoyed and to make some extra money. Now, at that job, his responsibility was to spread seed and fertilizer, and he worked very closely with Lush Fertilizer. Now, as a result of that, Mr. Weirs has suffered horrible damages, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Mr. Weirs is no longer able to sit down without his entire body being in pain. He's no longer able to breathe correctly. His entire body is in pain. He can't play the piano. He's no longer able to pursue a career in something he is so passionate in. Mr. Weirs earned a full ride scholarship to Juilliard, one of, if not the most prestigious music schools in the entire United States. But unfortunately, he's no longer able to attend because he's no longer able to play the piano. Now, Dr. Casey Rogers, a professor at UC Berkeley with a PhD in agriculture, is testifying today to causation. Dr. Rogers will tell you how he conducted an experiment on 3 different groups of people, ranging from people with little exposure to Drufo being the main bonding ingredient in Lush Fertilizer, to people with prolonged exposure to Drufo. Think farmers or landscapers. Now, Dr. Rogers will inform you that as a result of his experiment, he found that Drufo is carcinogenic, meaning that Drufo causes cancer. Now, his findings are backed up by Carson Durst, who is a former product engineer at Lush Fertilizer. Now, as part of his job, Ms. Durst was responsible for doing research on Drufo. She found a study that raised red flags about Drufo, that warned people about the dangers that Drufo held. It warned them that Drufo was carcinogenic, at least in rats. Now, when Ms. Durst brought that study to the attention of the higher management at Lush Fertilizer, she will explain that that was swept under the rug, that there were no measures taken to ensure Drufo's safety. She will explain that she was shunned out of Lush Fertilizer for being the only person to take those concerns seriously. Ms. Durst will explain how there was an option to bake the fertilizer, which would eliminate any harm that the fertilizer held. But you won't hear that that extra step was taken. Blake Doncourt, the CEO of Lush Fertilizer himself, will tell you that he chose not to bake the fertilizer because he believed that it was too expensive at the time, because he values profits over people. The defense will call Skylar Weirs, Dakota's own twin sibling, and Dr. Devin Williams, Lush's employee, to the stand. Skylar Weirs will try to convince you that Lush Fertilizer is completely safe, but Skylar Weirs is nothing more than an investigative journalist who's in no way qualified to make any claims about the safety of Drufo. Dr. Devin Williams is an employee at Lush Fertilizer who needs this case to be in his favor in order to have a career. Dr. Williams, will himself tell you that he has a financial bias in this case. Now, to the plaintiff, we request that you hold Lush Fertilizer liable and award Mr. Weirs for the damages that he has suffered. Thank you.
Defense, opening statement, please.
Are you able to understand me okay, Your Honor?
I can, I think so.
Okay. Good afternoon, Your Honor, and ladies and gentlemen of the jury. What happened to Dakota Weirs was a tragedy, but Lush Fertilizer is not to blame for what happened. In this trial, you will hear Mr. Doncourt, a known environmentalist, accused of intentionally adding harmful ingredients to his company's fertilizer, Drufo. You will hear that Lush Fertilizer covered up and withheld information about Drufo. Mr. Doncourt and Lush Fertilizer will be accused of trying to save money for personal reasons. However, none of this is true. Dakota Weirs has worked with fertilizers from a very young age, worked with a variety of fertilizer, and at some point used Drufo, but failed to use protective gear such as long sleeves, shirts, pants, face masks, and coverings. You will learn that Dakota Weirs first learned about Drufo being carcinogenic from television. They then hired lawyers and began the process to sue Lush Fertilizer. We've all seen the commercials like the one Dakota saw. They learned about it from TV, not from a doctor or specialist, and allowed that to convince her that Lush Fertilizer had caused her cancer, rather than doing research and being reasonable about other factors. We're here today because Weirs alleges that Lush Fertilizer was negligent in making a chemical that they should have known was lethal and failing to warn of the danger. But because Dakota was exposed to so many fertilizers and because he didn't take proper protective steps, they will be unable to meet his burden. Mr. Doncourt is well known in the fertilizer industry as an environmentalist. He would never add harmful ingredients to his fertilizers. He donates money to environmental charities to help preserve our planet, and specifically designed Drufo to fertilize without leaving behind any harmful chemicals. We are first going to hear from Blake Doncourt, defending his company against the claims Weirs is making. Mr. Doncourt will tell you about the plight of Lush to revolutionize the fertilizer industry and cause less harm to the environment, as well as provide background on the research for Drufo and the history of Lush. Then we will be hearing from Weirs' own twin, who has not only done extensive research on Drufo but doesn't believe in her own twin's claims. Finally, we'll hear from Dr. Devin Williams, an expert witness who is very knowledgeable and educated about Drufo. He has worked with Drufo for a long time and can provide scientific and statistical evidence disproving Weirs' claims. We anticipate that the plaintiff will call 3 witnesses today. They will call Dakota Weirs, Carson Durst, and Dr. Casey Rogers. First, we anticipate that you will hear from Dakota Weirs. Weirs has worked as a landscape technician from the age of 14. You will hear that during this time, he neglected to wear proper protective equipment, even though the labels for almost all fertilizers advised it. You will also hear that Dakota Weirs first learned about Drufo allegedly causing cancer by watching television. As you hear Mr. Weirs' argument, consider what measures he could have taken to prevent it and what other fertilizers he was exposed to that may have caused his cancer instead. Next, we anticipate hearing from Carson Durst, an ex-employee of Lush Fertilizer. You will hear that he left Lush Fertilizer to work for a competitor, Terrace Greenery, after receiving many complaints about his job performance. You will hear that his work with Terrace Greenery has mainly involved outperforming Lush Fertilizer, and that they left Lush Fertilizer on very bad terms. You will also hear that Mr. Durst did not witness anything concerning Drufo being carcinogenic in humans in the research that they came across and received concerning Drufo. As you hear Mr. Durst's argument, consider what motives he may have to testify against Lush Fertilizer. Finally, we anticipate that you'll hear from Dr. Casey Rogers, an expert in etymology who conducted his own study to prove that Drufo has adverse health effects on humans. You will hear that Dr. Rogers set out to prove that Drufo causes negative health effects by conducting an observational study on people who have been using Drufo regularly and people who had never used Drufo over a period of many years. You will hear that they found correlation between Drufo and cancer in certain amounts, and that they recommend many precautions to protect from Drufo. As you hear Dr. Rogers' argument, please consider the credibility of their study and the things that they could gain from the success of this case. At the end of this trial, my colleague, Mr. Lane, is going to review the evidence you've heard today and show that the defendant is not negligent. Again, what happened to Dakota Weirs is a big tragedy, but Lush is not to blame. Thank you.
Plaintiff, please call your first witness.
The plaintiff calls Dakota Weirs to the stand. Good morning, Mr. Weirs.
Hello.
Could you please state your full name and spell out your last for the jury?
Yes, my name is Dakota Weirs, Weirs.
And Mr. Weirs, are you currently in school?
Not currently.
Did you at least attend high school?
Yeah, I graduated from high school.
And what kinds of things did you do in high school?
During high school, I was a very active member in my community. I was a member of the National Honor Society, and I was president of my school student government.
Did you get accepted into a college?
Yeah, I got accepted into Juilliard, the school of my dreams.
And are you attending?
Unfortunately, I'm not attending anymore. You know, ever since I got non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, I couldn't attend anymore.
So what did you get accepted into Juilliard for?
I'm a pianist. I've done several concerts and won awards for it.
And how long have you been playing the piano for?
I've been playing the piano my whole life, you know.
What got you interested in piano?
My grandfather, he was a pianist. I remember ever since I was little, he really inspired me and just go and smash the keys while he's trying to play.
Well, on the topic of your family, what's your relationship like with the rest of your family?
Ever since I got non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, things have started to change, you know. Me and Scott drifted apart, and my father's agreed to shoulder the cost of my medical bills, which is also taking a toll on him.
Are you aware that your twin Skylar is testifying against you today?
Unfortunately, I'm painfully aware of that.
How do you feel about that?
I feel betrayed, to be honest.
Well, I'd like to talk a little bit about your illness now, Mr. Weirs. So could you describe some of your symptoms?
Yeah, I have pains all over my body all the time. Swollen lymph nodes, my abdomen swollen. It's hard to sit in one place for even that long. Shortness of breath, just so many symptoms.
When did you start noticing those symptoms?
I started noticing my symptoms around a year ago. I remember not being able to do my job as well as I used to be and just getting tired really fast.
What was your job?
I worked at Haven Landscaping as a landscaper.
And do you still work there?
Not currently. After everything that's happened, I've had to take a break from work.
Well, what did you do at Haven Landscaping?
At Haven Landscaping, I was in charge of seeding and fertilizing. So Lush fertilizer was one of the main products I used on a day-to-day basis.
And what were you using Lush fertilizer on?
I used Lush fertilizer on lawns, golf courses, and shopping malls and gardens, anywhere that needed it.
And how soon would you say you were using Lush fertilizer?
I've been working my landscaping job ever since I was 14. And since then, I would use it pretty much every time I worked.
So did you ever read the packaging label?
Yes, I recently read the packaging label.
Mr. Weirs, if I were to show you a copy of that label today, do you think you'd be able to recognize it?
Yes, definitely.
Right. Just to confirm, Mr. Weirs, do you currently have a copy of Exhibit 1 in front of you?
Yes, let me pull it up really quickly.
Let the record reflect that the witness is now viewing what has been marked as Exhibit 1. So, Mr. Weirs, what is this exhibit?
Excuse me?
Do you recognize this exhibit?
Yes.
And what is it?
This is the label on the Lush fertilizer packaging.
And is this a fair and accurate copy of the packaging label?
Yes.
All right, at this time, I would like to admit Exhibit 1 into evidence.
Any objection? Defense,
No, Your Honor.
Exhibit 1 will be admitted into evidence for all purposes. Do you need the exhibit screen share?
Yes, Your Honor, let me screen share. Okay, and Mr. Weirs, could you please read out the ingredients?
Okay, the active ingredients are drufo, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, and iron.
So what makes Lush fertilizer different than its counterparts?
I believe it's the fact that Lush fertilizer contains as one of the active ingredients drufo.
Okay, and are there any warnings about drufo on the label?
There are no warnings. The only thing is user safety recommendations.
And what do those recommend?
I can read it out. It says, as with any spray fertilizer, utilize protective clothing that covers exposed skin. Use of a respirator or N95 mask is recommended. Follow manufacturer's instructions for cleaning and maintaining personal protective equipment.
And did you ever wear any protective equipment?
When I worked during the summer since I had school, and it was really hot. My boss really never enforced anything to do with wearing protective clothing, and none of my colleagues ever wore it. And the biggest reason is there's no warning on the label talking about what dangers would have happened about drufo.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination?
Hi, Your Honor. I'm Athena Encinas, and I'll be doing the cross-examination. Your Honor, may I proceed?
Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Mr. Weirs. Before I begin asking questions, I want to take a moment and offer you my condolences for what you're going through.
Thank you.
Let's talk about why you believe Lush fertilizer is responsible for causing your illness.
I'm sorry, I'm having a really hard time hearing you. Could you speak up a little bit?
Let's talk about why you believe Lush fertilizer is responsible for causing your illness.
Okay.
You are certain that drufo produced by Lush fertilizer made you sick, correct?
Yes,
In fact, you believe that drufo alone made you sick.
I believe so.
You first formed this opinion while watching television.
I was watching television and I saw something about the dangers and the possible fact that drufo is carcinogenic.
So is that a yes or no?
Yes.
You heard about documents being leaked that showed drufo caused non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Yes.
At that moment, you were convinced that drufo caused your illness.
At that moment, I was concerned that since I knew I had worked with Lush fertilizer products, I was concerned that maybe my sickness and Lush fertilizer was linked. It was my dad who did the research on whether or not that's true.
Okay. You never reviewed these leaked documents, correct?
Excuse me?
You never reviewed these leaked documents, correct?
My father reviewed and researched.
But you never reviewed them, correct?
Yes.
You also determined drufo caused your illness because Skylar, your twin, did not develop non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Yes.
Since you are twins, you believe that if you develop non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, then she should have too?
Yes.
We'll talk about this more in a moment, but you agree that drufo was not the only fertilizer you used when doing landscaping work, correct?
Like I said before, I was in charge of seeding and fertilizing. So when I was fertilizing, I did use Lush as the main product, but I also did use seed products.
In your words, you used several other fertilizers and lawn chemicals?
Yes.
To be clear, your sister Skylar, to your knowledge, was never exposed to any of those other chemicals?
Yes, they did not work a landscaping job that had to do with any exposure to chemicals like that.
let's shift gears and talk about your exposure, sorry, to multiple fertilizers and chemicals when you worked as a landscaper. Since you were 14 years old, you worked as a landscape technician for Haven Landscaping.
Yes.
Your main job was to spread seeds and fertilizer.
Yes.
You love the job in part because you can feel the wind on your bare
Yes.
face.
Yeah.
That's part of the reason why you didn't wear a face mask when your boss told you to.
That is part of the reason.
You were also told that you needed to wear long sleeve pants and gloves when you use fertilizer, correct?
I was.
Despite being told you wore shorts and t-shirts.
I did that because there's no warnings whatsoever on the label talking about any sort of dangers,
So is that a yes or no?
I guess.
You stated, if I had known that Lush fertilizer caused non-Hodgkin lymphoma, I may have done things differently.
Yes, but like I said, there's nothing regarding even the fact that Drufo is dangerous on the product. And I never thought anything like this would have happened to me.
But Lush wasn't the only fertilizer you worked with.
Yes.
As we discussed, you worked with several other fertilizers and chemicals.
But Lush fertilizer was the main product I used.
So that's a yes.
Yes.
You are aware that some of the fertilizers you worked with required taking certain precautions,
I believe so, yes.
like wearing a mask.
Yes.
You understand that these fertilizers contain warnings and precautions because they help customers take certain precautions.
Their recommendations of user safety, there's nothing on the labels talking about true dangers of the products.
Is that a yes or a no?
Yes.
One second, please. Okay, let's talk about let's talk about what you did know about Lush fertilizer when you were using it. Your prior boss from Haven Landscaping sent you a photograph of the labels placed on the fertilizer.
Yes.
This label in all capital letters states user safety recommendations.
Yes.
It says, as with all spray fertilizers, utilize protective clothing that covers exposed skin.
Mm-hmm.
Use of a respirator or an N95 mask recommended.
Yes.
Users should wash their hands before and after using this product.
Yes.
It includes another section that says caution,
Yes.
eye irritation.
Yes.
Despite all of this information, Mr. Weirs, it is still your opinion that Lush fertilizer alone is 100% responsible for causing your illness?
It speaks of only eye irritation and user safety recommendations. There's nothing about the fact that it destroyed my life.
So is that a yes or a no?
Yes.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Any redirect?
Briefly, Your Honor.
Please proceed.
Mr. Weirs, were there any warnings about Drufo on the packaging label?
There were no warnings on the packaging. Nothing talking about the dangers of this product. Nothing talking about how I wouldn't be able to use my hands, how I wouldn't be able to pursue my career. It doesn't say anything about how it took my life away from me. It doesn't say that it would destroy everything that I've ever loved.
And Mr. Weirs, why didn't you ever wear any protective gear?
As I said before, there's no warnings. You know, it's summer, it's hot. I was a teenager, you know? My friends never wore any of the protective gear. My boss never enforced it, you know?
No further questions.
Thank you. Plaintiff, call your next witness, please.
Your Honor, the plaintiff calls Carson Durst to the stand.
Mr. Durst, you've previously been sworn.
Good evening, Ms. Durst. Could you please state your name and spell your last name for the court?
Carson Durst, D-U-R-S-T.
And where did you go to school?
I went to school at Arizona State University.
Did you attain any degrees there?
Yes, I have a bachelor's in chemical engineering.
All right. Where do you currently work?
I currently work at Terrace Greenery.
And how long have you been working at Terrace Greenery?
I've been working at Terrace Greenery since 2006, so about 15 years.
What did you do before then?
I worked at Lush Fertilizer.
All right. And how long did you work at Lush Fertilizers?
I worked at Lush Fertilizer for about a year or more.
All right. And how did you start Lush Fertilizers? What was your first job?
Yes, Lush Fertilizer was my first job. I was having trouble finding a job right out of college. But I was close friends with Blake Doncourt's son, Charles Doncourt. And I expressed to Charles Doncourt that I had trouble finding work outside of university. And he said that Lush Fertilizer were hiring. And so I applied. And he put in a word for me and I got the job.
What exact position did you have when you started at Lush Fertilizer?
Yes, I was an intern with the research and development team.
And then did you stay as an intern for that entire time?
No, after after 3 months, I moved up the ladder and I became full-time.
All right. Okay. So so it took you 3 months to move up the ladder.
Correct.
And then why did you leave Lush Fertilizers?
Can you please repeat that?
You mentioned you currently work at Terrace Greenery, so you left Lush Fertilizers. Why did you leave Lush Fertilizer?
I was fired in December 2006, but before that, I had many complications with the company and Blake Doncourt.
Were you trained when you were at Lush Fertilizers?
Yes, I was.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to admit Carson Durst as an expert in the fields of chemical engineering and research regarding her field, as she has demonstrated the requisite education, training, and experience through plenty of training through Lush Fertilizers, 15 years of experience at Terrace Greenery, as well as a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor, the defense objects. A bachelor's degree we don't believe is enough to qualify you by education. Furthermore, they only spent about 1 year working directly under Lush Fertilizer, so they wouldn't be qualified to speak on matters pertaining to Lush Fertilizer. And also, we haven't heard any description of their responsibilities at Terrace Greenery, so we have no way of knowing if they're qualified based on their time there.
Reply.
Seeing as Ms. Durst has risen through the ranks of Lush Fertilizer quickly and has kept a job at Terrace Greenery for quite a while, Ms. Durst must have had at least a baseline level of experience to keep a job and go up the ladder that quickly, which I feel demonstrates the bare minimum requirements for Ms. Durst to be admitted as an expert.
Well, I will grant the request to deem this witness qualified as an expert in the stated areas. If, and the witness may testify as to, or in the form of opinion pursuant to Rule 702. And defense counsel, if you wish to explore further the qualifications of this witness, you may do so on cross-examination. Please proceed.
Your Honor. All right, Ms. Durst, at your time at Lush, could you tell me about your responsibilities at Lush Fertilizers?
Yes, since I was an intern on the research and development team, I worked with them to research chemical compounds in products such as Jufo.
What did your research entail?
My research for Jufo, can you please repeat that or like rephrase it?
What did you review any studies in your research or anything like that?
Yes, we did. And we found, or I found, that Jufo could be carcinogenic in rats. And when we did figure out or find anything that caught our eye, we would put it in notebooks.
What brought you to the conclusion that Truffaut is carcinogenic in rats?
I saw a study, an English study, saying that a compound that was in Jufo be carcinogenic in rats.
And where did you find that study?
Online.
Okay. And would you recognize a copy of that study if I were to show it to you today?
Yes.
Right. Do you have a copy of the study, which is marked as Exhibit 3 in front of you right now?
No, not currently.
Let me know once you get it. And then may I just verify that members of the jury and Your Honor has a copy of Exhibit 3?
I'm sorry, that what request?
Verify that members of the jury and Your Honor have a copy of Exhibit 3 in front of them?
I do.
Okay.
And I believe the panelists, the jury does also.
All right, perfect. Mr. Is this a fair and accurate copy of the study that you mentioned earlier?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to admit Exhibit 3 into evidence.
Any objection? Anybody on the defense have any objections? Do we
No,
have
Your
it?
Honor.
All right, Mr.
Okay.
Can you tell me?
Wait, hold it.
My apologies.
Okay. Who is the attorney for the defense on this witness? I'm not seeing it on my screen is the reason I'm asking. And I wonder if we have a technical issue.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yes, would the attorney who is representing the defense as to this witness please identify yourself and make sure you're, oh, okay. All right, Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No problem.
All right, and you have no objection to the admission of this exhibit, correct?
Correct.
Okay, Exhibit 3 will be admitted as an exhibit for all purposes.
All right, Misters, what are we looking at here?
We are looking at a copy of the English research that I found.
And what did you do after finding this research paper?
I put it down and I put it in my notebook and I showed your link.
Okay, and what conclusion did this study come to?
That a compound such as C3NO9P that is presented in Jufo could be carcinogenic in rats.
And in your professional opinion, what do you think about the credibility of this study?
Can you please repeat that?
In your professional opinion, what do you think about the credibility of this study?
I think this is pretty credible.
Okay. All right. So moving on. What did you do after? So let's move on. Is this the only piece of research that you did while working at Lush Fertilizers?
Yes.
So What did you do with this study?
I put the study in my notebook. I talked to Jerry Lange, my supervisor, about this, and
Okay. And who's Jerry Langley?
my supervisor.
All right. And you said that you talked to him about it?
Correct.
Did you ever send this, the information in your notebook to anyone?
No, with the notebooks, we would put our like our findings in the notebook, and then Jerry Lange would review them and then create a big report. And then the report would be sent out in an email, and we'd have a big meeting discussing it.
Who's we in this scenario?
Me and my colleagues.
Okay. So how did you relay your information to your supervisors?
Can you please repeat that? Sorry.
So you said that you sent your information to middle and upper management. How did you do that?
How did
you send them the information?
Oh yeah, through the notebook. That was.
I thought you said that you didn't send the notebook to anyone.
I did. I didn't reach. Jerry Lange would collect them, and.
What did Jerry do with the information?
He would put it in a big report and send it out through email.
Okay. You said he sent it out through email. How often does this occur?
Usually after every research that we did, or yeah.
All right. Would you recognize a copy of one of these emails if I were to present it to you today?
Yes, I will.
And these emails Jerry Langley set out were sent to you as well, correct? As well as a bunch of others?
Correct. Yes, correct.
Do you have a copy of Exhibit 4 in front of you right now?
I do.
All right. Is this a fair and accurate copy of the email we addressed earlier?
Yes, it is.
And again, why are you, what is your connection to this email?
It was sent to me because I was a part of the research team.
All right, Your Honor, at this time, I would like to admit Exhibit 4 into evidence.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor, the defense objects. We don't believe the email is relevant to if Lush Fertilizer was negligent in this case.
Response?
The email provides knowledge that Lush Fertilizer may have had, which pertains to negligence, as negligence is knowing and ignoring your knowledge. And the email could present potential knowledge that Lush Fertilizer attained.
Reply?
No reply, Your Honor.
Objection is overruled. Exhibit 4 is admitted to evidence for all purposes.
Apologies. One moment. All right. Misters, who is this email from?
Jerry Lange.
And this was sent to this was sent to all these people here, correct?
Correct.
All right. And could you read the first name on the second line of who this was sent to for me?
Like
You're cutting out. Can you repeat, please? I still cannot hear you.
Okay. I said Blake Doncourt.
And who is Blake Doncourt?
CEO and founder of Lush Fertilizer.
And could you read the first line of the second paragraph of this email?
Yes, I can. Following our lab's June Drusilla study, concerns have arisen regarding generalized findings of potential carcinogenic qualities identified in samples produced during a period earlier in the year.
And what does that mean?
Basically means that they found findings that Jufo could be carcinogenic, potentially carcinogenic.
And who's they in this situation?
Lush Fertilizer.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. My name is Bennett Lane. I'll be conducting the cross-examination.
Please proceed.
Thank you. Ms. Durst, I'd like to start by discussing what you stand to gain from the outcome of this trial. Is it true that you currently work for a competitor of Lush Fertilizer?
That's true.
Is it true that you and your employer would both benefit financially if it was found that Drufo is a carcinogen?
Yes,
Do you agree that Terra's Greenery is a major competitor for Lush Fertilizer?
I agree.
And you both compete for the same market share?
Yes,
And Terra's Greenery isn't able to manufacture products using Drufo because it's patented by Lush Fertilizer?
correct.
And you would say that Drufo makes Lush Fertilizer product much better than its competitors?
Yes,
Is it true that you and Terra's Greenery have still been unable to create a product as effective as Lush Fertilizer?
yes, that's correct.
Would you agree that if Drufo is found to have caused non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, then Drufo and Lush Fertilizer would see substantially less sales?
Can you repeat that? Sorry.
Yes. Do you agree that if it's found Drufo is a carcinogen, Lush Fertilizer would have substantially less sales?
Yes, I do.
Objection, Your Honor. Lack of personal knowledge.
Response?
As the lead product developer for Terra's Greenery, this should be within their knowledge.
Reply?
Seeing as Ms. Durst is the lead product developer, they develop products, but most likely do not have extensive knowledge about the way these products are sold or the effect of different compounds in how well the products sell. They would have no knowledge about the business related side of these fertilizers.
Objection is overruled. I think there's been enough testimony regarding the witness's position to provide some sufficient personal knowledge of the subject of the question. This is overruled.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
Ms. Doncourt, I'd like to spend some time talking about your work on Lush Fertilizer and your relationship with Mr. Doncourt.
Okay.
Is it true that before your time with Lush Fertilizer, you were close friends with Mr. Doncourt?
I was close friends with Charles Doncourt.
But you did have a pre-existing relationship with Blake Doncourt.
Yes,
Did you receive your initial internship at Lush Fertilizer because of your relationship with the Doncourts?
yes, I did.
Is it true that you became an engineer at Lush Fertilizer after only 3 months of your internship?
That's correct.
Were you promoted this quickly because of your relationship with the Doncourts?
I don't think so. I think that I was promoted quickly because I did really good work.
Thank you. Some of your coworkers believed you were promoted this quickly because of your relationship with Mr. Doncourt, though.
Yes, they did. Did you say something?
Can you answer the question, Ms.?
I didn't hear the question.
I wasn't able to hear. Our
Okay, I
internet
apologize.
our internet is cutting.
One moment.
No.
Would you say
Sorry,
some of your
please.
coworkers believed that you were promoted this quickly at Lush Fertilizer because of your relationship with the Doncourts?
Yes.
Did you join Tara's Greenery to get back at Mr. Doncourt?
Yes, I did.
Now that we've established your role in the case, I'd like to talk about your experience working on the development of Drufo.
Okay.
When you started at Lush Fertilizer, Drufo had already been initially developed, right?
Yes.
So your coworkers that had worked on Drufo from the start had a better understanding of the chemical.
They did.
Is it true that your work on Drufo was limited specifically to one particular chemical compound and its safety?
Yes.
The study that you provided for the court and brought up to your employers, is it true that you did not yourself conduct this study?
It's true. I did.
You did or did not conduct the study?
I did not conduct this study. Yeah.
That's because it was conducted in England, right?
Yes.
And conducted on rats, not people?
Yes.
And so this study that was conducted in a foreign country on rats is your entire basis that Drufo may be a carcinogen in people?
Yes, that's correct.
Were you able to recreate this study and its findings?
No.
You also don't know of anyone who is able to recreate this study and its findings.
No, I'm not.
Were the results of this experiment uncertain?
Yes.
Did this experiment specifically test Drufo or just one ingredient of it?
One ingredient that was in Drufo.
So the one experiment you have provided today as evidence didn't even test Drufo?
No, they did not.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Plaintiff, call your next witness, please.
Your Honor, I would like to call Dr. Casey Rogers to the stand.
Dr. Rogers, you've previously been sworn. Please proceed.
What? Sorry, what?
Dr. Rogers, can you please state your name for the jury and spell your last name?
Yes, my name is Dr. Casey Rogers, Rogers.
And what is your relevance to this case?
I'm a researcher studying Drufo.
Dr. Rogers, could you tell us where you went to school and earned your degree?
I earned my degree, or my Bachelor of Science degree in agriculture and chemistry at CU, and I earned my PhD in agriculture and entomology at UC Berkeley.
And what is your current work experience?
I'm currently working UC as a professor in horticulture and entomology at UC Berkeley, and I previously worked at a multinational chemical company as a research analyst.
Could you explain a bit about what it is that you do and your role within your current job?
Gather research, and then I send the results back to my higher ups.
And how long have you been doing that for?
For a couple of years.
You said you do research. Are there any specific articles you've written or things of that nature?
Yeah, I've written a lot of articles, but in specific, I wrote this one that's titled Drufo and the effects on the human body.
At this time, I would like to admit Casey Rogers is an expert due to the fact that he has demonstrated the necessary skills, knowledge, and education for admission as an expert, as he has a PhD in agriculture and entomology and has published many research articles in this field, as well as has worked for many years now on the topics that he is most versed in.
What are the topics that you're asking him to be qualified in again?
Agriculture and entomology.
Any response?
No objection, Your Honor.
This witness will be deemed qualified under Rule 702 as an expert in agriculture and entomology and may testify in the form of opinion evidence pursuant to Rule 702. Please proceed.
Dr. Rogers, could you inform us as to what DRUFO is?
Yes, Drupo is a bonding agent that Lush specifically made for their products to keep it preserved and intact.
You said you do research. Why did you decide to conduct research on DRUFO?
The reason I decided to conduct research on Drupo was because it was a new product, and I personally thought that it was rushed to the market.
You said you do studies. Did you do any studies with regards to DRUFO?
Yes, I did multiple studies.
And what did those studies entail?
This one specific study that I did is where I had 3 groups of people with 3 different levels of exposure to Drupo. The first group being people who had never been exposed to Drupo. Second group of people being people who were exposed to Drupo maybe once a week, like gardeners. And the third group was people who were exposed to it almost on a daily basis, like for example, farmers and landscapers.
And what was your conclusion?
The results that I found after the study was that people who were almost exposed to it on the Drupo on the daily were 10 times more likely to develop cancer than those who had never been exposed, and 5 times more likely to develop cancer than those who were moderately exposed.
And which group do you believe our client Dakota Weirs would fall into?
I think Dakota Weirs would fall into the 3rd category of people who were exposed almost on a daily basis.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination,
May I proceed, Your Honor?
you may.
Dr. Rogers, pardon me. Let's talk about why you're here today. You stand to gain a tremendous amount if Mr. Weirs gets a favorable verdict. Is that correct?
Sorry, I can't hear you. What was that?
Sorry. Let's talk about why you're here today. You stand to gain a tremendous amount if Mr. Weirs gets a favorable verdict. Is that correct?
Although that might be correct, that is not the only reason that I'm here. I don't want anyone else being hurt by harmful products like Drupo.
This is the first time you've testified as an expert witness,
Yes, this is the first time.
but you hope this is not your last time. Is that correct?
Yes, I do hope this is not my last time.
And that's because you believe that if you do get a favorable verdict, it will open the door to other class action lawsuits,
Yes,
and you hope to be on the forefront of those battles.
yes, I do.
Not only do you hope there will be other cases, but you are also being paid to be retained as an expert in this case. Is that correct?
Yes, I am getting paid.
So in other words, Mr. Weirs is your employer.
I guess you could think of it that way.
Okay. Let's move on to discuss the credibility of your study. You agree that as a scientist, it's important to be objective in your studies. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And it would be bad if a scientist conducting a study wanted a particular outcome, correct?
Correct. Yes.
And you conducted your own study on Drupo.
Yes, I did. It was my personal study.
You did not start this study objectively, did you?
Sorry, what was that?
You did not start this study objectively. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Well, before you conducted your study, you determined that Drupo was rushed to the market.
Yes, I have said that previously. I do think that it is rushed to market.
And you reached this conclusion even though you were not an employee at Lush Fertilizer.
Yes, that is correct.
Dr. Rogers, you agree that you would not be hired as an expert for the plaintiff if you concluded that Drupo was safe, correct?
I'm not sure. I'd assume not.
Is that a no?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sorry. You agree that you would not have been hired as an expert for the plaintiff if you concluded that Drupo was safe?
Yes.
Okay. You agree that before you began your study, you believed that Drupo was dangerous?
Yes, I did.
And you had heard of many reports on the potentially negative effects of Drupo.
Um, there was no research that I could find about Drupal, or no public studies at least.
You stated in your statement that you did find reports detailing the negative effects.
Sorry, what was that? I couldn't hear you.
Pardon me. You stated in your statement that you did find reports detailing the negative effects of Drupal.
I think I did say that. Yes.
And so you specifically studied Drupal to determine if there were any negative effects.
Yes, I did.
Okay, let's move on to the substance of your study. You included a control group of people who had never been exposed to Drupal in your study, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And your study included a group of people who used Drupal on occasion as well?
Yes.
Finally, your study included people who were exposed to Drupal regularly, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Importantly, Dr. Rogers, the people exposed to Drupal were farm laborers and gardeners?
Yes, along with, sorry, continue.
You're okay. You do not know whether the farm laborers, as part of their job, were exposed to other fertilizers that could cause cancer?
Other fertilizers could be potentially harmful, but as to my knowledge, Drupal is the only known carcinogen in all of the fertilizers.
So you isolated Drupal as the only thing that these workers were exposed to?
Yes.
Okay. You do not know whether the gardeners in your study were exposed to other fertilizers that could cause cancer?
No.
For example, they could be office workers? Oh. Pardon me, that was incorrect. So you did not control the type of people who were not exposed to Drupal in your study?
Sorry.
Pardon me. You didn't control the type of people who were exposed to Drupal in your study?
I mainly observed farmers and gardeners, and sometimes, and landscapers.
Okay, to put it simply, we didn't know the demographics of your control group. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you. No further questions.
Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor, briefly.
Please proceed.
Dr. Rogers, what were the three groups in your study?
The three groups in my study were a group of people who had never been exposed to Drupal, the second group of people who were exposed to Drupal maybe around once a week, the third group being people who were exposed to Drupal almost like on a daily basis.
So what kind of people would comprise each of the groups?
For the first group, it'd be normal day-to-day people that you see outside in the streets or like walking around. And then the second group would be people who do gardening in their backyards. And the third group of people would be farmers taking care of their crops, and also landscapers who have to grow grass. And
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Does plaintiff have any further witnesses?
No further witnesses, Your Honor.
Plaintiff rests?
Yes, Your Honor.
Defense, please call your first witness.
Defense would like to call Dr. Devin Williams as our first witness.
Dr. Williams, you've been previously sworn. Please proceed.
Okay. Dr. Williams, please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
My name is Dr. Devin Williams, W-I-L-L-I-A-M-S.
Pardon me, doctor, could you speak up? I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Sorry. My name is Dr. Williams, Williams.
And what do you do for a living?
I lead the toxicology labs at Lush Fertilizer, and I'm the outgoing head of the company's ethics committee.
How did you end up in that position?
I began working at Lush around 2010, where I was hired due to my expertise and education in toxicology, which is the study of how things like chemicals and other substances affect the body. I was later promoted to lead the labs, largely due to my, I was later promoted to lead the labs, largely to oversee the work on the environmental impacts of DRUFO.
And what does this mean?
Toxicology is the study of how substances impact the body. Being a toxicologist means I have a strong understanding of biology and chemistry, and I work with chemicals to determine how substances, to determine how harmful they are to people.
What accreditations or certifications, if any, do you hold?
I'm certified in toxicology in Colorado, New Mexico, Wyoming, and Utah. I'm certified in clinical toxicology, forensic toxicology, and I'm a bioanalytical laboratory director in toxicology. I'm also the author of numerous studies in the field.
Your Honor, defense moves to tender Dr. Devin Williams as an expert in toxicology and bioanalysis.
Toxicology and what?
And bioanalysis.
Any objection?
No objections, Your Honor.
This witness will be deemed qualified as an expert in toxicology and bioanalysis and may testify through opinions pursuant to Rule 702. Please proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Let's talk about why DRUFO was created. Can you tell us about the nature and intent of DRUFO? For example, how does it avoid eutrophication?
Well, the goal of DRUFO was to create an industry-leading and environmentally conscious product that would effectively spur plant and crop growth, and at the same time, reducing the impact of fertilizers on the environment. DRUFO is an binding agent that works to keep the plants and the fertilizer bound where they are sprayed. This keeps them in the plant and out of the water supply, where the excess nitrogen can cause things like harmful algae blooms and a process called eutrophication. Because of the effectiveness of DRUFO, less fertilizer needs to be sprayed on plants for them to work properly.
And why is it important that less fertilizer containing DRUFO is sprayed?
Well, the less fertilizer that needs to be sprayed, the less they can get washed away or otherwise moved to areas that can be harmful, like the water supply. The Earth and its ecosystems are in a delicate balance. It's important that we disturb that balance as little as possible.
Where, if anywhere, is DRUFO banned?
It's my understanding that the lawsuit notes that DRUFO is banned in France. However, that doesn't go far enough. DRUFO is banned in the EU and every country that relies on the EU to make its policies.
Why is DRUFO banned in the EU?
DRUFO is not banned, as the lawsuit would let you know, due to DRUFO's allegedly carcinogenic nature. DRUFO is banned in the EU because EU regulations prohibit any new fertilizers that can cause incidental nitrate accumulations in lab tests. And although DRUFO greatly reduces the number of nitrates in the real world, the EU has decided, unfortunately, not to base its testing on the real world.
What's the state of the European Union ban on DRUFO?
Lush is applying for reconsideration of that ban.
And how does the U.S. Department of Agriculture see this issue?
Luckily for the U.S. and its plants, the Department of Agriculture relies on its own research and does not see any reason to ban DRUFO.
Let's now discuss the health impacts DRUFO may possibly have on its users. What is the correlation between DRUFO and cancer?
There is no significant correlation between DRUFO and cancer.
Okay, can you elaborate on that for us, please?
Well, starting with the conclusion, all the data we've analyzed has come back far below the normal confidence level. In other words, all the data we saw was consistent with users of fertilizers not having an elevated risk of cancer compared to users of DRUFO.
What does this mean?
Well, that means that from all the evidence we've examined and all the testing we've done, We see no link between exposure to Drufo and non-Hodgkin lymphoma. I know it sounds callous, but statistically speaking, there's a certain percentage of people who will develop non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and there is no reason to believe this case is due to Drufo.
Now that we've established that there is no known causation, let's talk about Dr. Rogers' study. How familiar are you with Dr. Rogers' experiment?
I've reviewed it, so I'm very familiar.
And what conclusions did you reach about Dr. Rogers' study?
I think that Dr. Rogers' study is fundamentally flawed. Dr. Rogers looked at rates of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in farmers, gardeners, and people who did neither. This is comparing apples to oranges.
What do you mean when you say that?
People who farmers live very different lives than casual gardeners with very different environmental conditions. The same goes with casual gardeners from people who don't do either of those things. Any valid study, we need to compare people to the same environmental conditions. Otherwise, the study cannot be valid.
Why don't you believe that there's any valid evidence that Drufo is connected to non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
I have spent years of my life studying toxicology, or the study of how substances affect the body. I have certifications in toxicology in 4 different states, and I teach classes on it in 2 different universities. I've spent my life figuring out how chemicals affect the body, and there are no substances I know better than Drufo. All the research we have done is show that there's no connection between Drufo and non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Dr. Rogers' study has not been peer-reviewed, and it has not been replicated. Dr. Rogers is seeking to make a career as an expert witness, testifying on the dangerous nature of Drufo. I had a professor at CSU who says, when someone finds what they set out to find, always question their results. And I think that has never been more true than it is right now.
Thank you. No further questions.
Cross-examination,
Yes, Your Honor.
please proceed.
So, Dr. Williams, you yourself stated that you have spent many years of your life, or you've committed your entire life to researching toxicology, correct?
That is true.
Which means that it is your job and your responsibility to identify toxic chemicals, correct?
Absolutely, and I take it very seriously.
So it's, my apologies, let me rephrase. So in Lush Fertilizer, you identify harmful chemicals and anything that could be potentially, for example, carcinogenic, correct?
Yes.
And you have worked on Drufo. You've been pivotal in the creation of Drufo, correct?
I have been very close to the creation of Drufo.
Okay. So as you have stated earlier, it would be your responsibility to identify if Drufo was potentially dangerous, correct?
Yes, it has been my responsibility, and I've done it very well.
So if Drufo were to be found potentially carcinogenic, it would be your responsibility.
Yes, it would. But
it would be your downfall.
Say that Drufo, there's nothing to say Drufo is carcinogenic.
But if it were to be found,
yes, if it were to be found, it would be bad.
All right. Now, Lush Fertilizer contains Drufo, yeah?
Yes.
And Lush Fertilizer is the company's flagship product.
Yes.
So it presumably brings in money, correct?
Of course.
So again, if Drufo is potentially to be found carcinogenic, Lush would lose money.
We would lose money.
Their primary fertilizer would not be on the market anymore.
A primary ingredient in our fertilizer would not be on the market.
Okay, sure. So, all right. So again, let's go back to, let me rephrase my question from earlier. So it is your responsibility to identify whether Drufo is a carcinogen, correct? If it were to be.
Yes, I lead the labs that study the impact of Drufo.
Now, you study chemicals, so you have the potential to save lives, correct?
In a fertilizer, I
In
guess
any toxic chemical.
preventing the destruction of lives.
Yeah, so you can prevent, let me rephrase, you can prevent the destruction of lives for people who could have potentially used something toxic, correct?
Can you rephrase the question again?
So you, in your job, you could potentially identify a chemical that is toxic, and by people knowing that, their lives could be saved, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
But if you were to mess up by that same line of logic, people could die.
Yes.
And you would lose credibility if that were the case.
What did you say? I'm sorry.
And you would lose credibility if that were the case, correct?
It would be that.
Objection. Relevancy.
Response?
Your Honor, we're talking about chemicals, which is this entire witness's profession, as well as talking about Lush Fertilizer itself, which is the main thing under contention here in this trial.
Reply.
I'm just confused about why we're analyzing Dr. Williams's understanding of Drufo when he's worked with the company for so long.
I'm going to overrule the objection. I do see some relevance to this line of questioning. So please proceed.
All right, so let me go back to my previous question and just rephrase. So if you were to mess up on your work, you would lose credibility.
Yes.
So if Drufo were to be found carcinogenic, you would lose credibility.
Yes.
Lush would lose money,
Yes.
and Lush pays you.
Lush does pay me as well as the universities I work at.
So you would lose money as well.
Yes.
All right, so let's move on. You have reviewed case material before coming into court today, correct?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
You have reviewed case material before coming into court today, correct?
Yes.
So you are aware that nitrogen is a carcinogen, correct?
Yes. In high enough quantities, nitrogen can be a carcinogen.
All right. And nitrogen is within Lush Fertilizer, correct?
Yes, all fertilizers contain nitrogen.
And you yourself stated that Drufo is a revolutionary binding agent.
It is.
A binding agent that attaches the fertilizer to plants, correct?
Yes. It attaches the fertilizer and its ingredients, including the nitrogen, to the plants so they don't run off into the water supply where they can be consumed by people.
Now, a plant is a living organism, correct?
The plant is a living organism.
And so are humans.
Humans are also living organisms, though I wouldn't call them plant-like.
But again, they are both living organisms.
They both are alive.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please proceed.
Dr. Williams, can you say a little bit about the low amount of Drufo that is necessary to be sprayed in order for the product to be successful?
Absolutely. The effectiveness of Drufo as a binding agent means that it only needs to be applied about twice a year, as opposed to a normal fertilizer, which might be applied 5 or 6 times. This means that the nitrogen in the fertilizer, which the opposing counsel notes is a carcinogen, is much less likely to end up in the water supply. And if it does, it is in much smaller amounts. Drufo saves lives through its use as a binding agent. It is great for the environment and it's great for people.
So can you analyze a little bit more about how the low amounts of Drufo could potentially prevent exposure to nitrogen?
Yes, like I said, because Drufo needs to be sprayed less of it ends up where people are. And because less of Lush fertilizer ends up where people are, less nitrogen ends up there too.
Thank you. No further questions.
Nitrogen away from people. It's plain as that.
My apologies, Dr. Williams. I cut you off. No further questions.
Okay, thank you. Defense, please call your next witness.
Your Honor, the defense would like to call on Blake Doncourt. Your Honor, may I proceed?
You may. Mr. Doncourt, you've been previously sworn. Please proceed.
Please introduce yourself and spell your last name for the record.
My name is Blake Doncourt. That is Doncourt.
Mr. Doncourt, why are we here today?
Well, we are here today because my company has been wrongfully accused of ignoring a known carcinogen.
What's your response to this accusation?
I believe that the accusations are false. We never had credible information showing that Drufo caused cancer. Let me say, I feel terrible about what has happened to Dakota Weirs. I sincerely wish nothing but the best for them. At the same time, my company is not responsible for their illness, which is why we are here.
Let's sort of, sorry. Let's briefly talk about your background. Mr. Doncourt, what do you do?
I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Lush Fertilizer Incorporated since 2000. I've grown the company from an unknown producer of fertilizers to one of the world's largest suppliers of yard and commercial fertilizers.
What sort of fertilizers do you make?
Our flagship product is Lush Fertilizers, which is used by businesses, governments, and individuals to create vibrant, lush, and green grass.
How were you able to make Lush fertilizer so successful?
It was years of development and after spending a lot of money. Producing fertilizer is very technical and relies heavily on science, so you have to do a lot of research.
Other than being a CEO of Lush Fertilizer, what else do you do?
Well, I direct 10% of Lush's annual profits to charities. Most of these charities work to reduce our global nitrogen footprint. I'm proud to say that my work with charities has led to Lush receiving environmental sustainability awards. I was even nominated for the UN's Champions of the Earth Award in 2020, and I had hoped to win this award in 2021 before this all happened.
Mr. Doncourt, I want to talk to you specifically about Lush Fertilizer. What's your understanding on why we're here in court today?
I understand that Lush Fertilizer is being falsely accused of ignoring a known carcinogen in our fertilizer.
Did you ignore a known carcinogen?
Of course not. We did extensive research and testing before putting our flagship product on the market and did not have evidence showing Drufo caused non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
What do you mean by you did extensive researching?
Lush has a toxicology research and development team to handle precisely these matters. Our team found nothing to suggest that even a warning label was required. I've never been aware of a substantiated concern that Drufo was dangerous.
Why do you say substantiated?
Well, as you heard, Casey Rogers claims to have done a form of research, but that was never published in a scientific journal. We have to rely on trustworthy news sources.
Finally, let's talk about Carson Durst's testimony. You were present when Carson Durst testified.
I was.
What's your response, if any, do you have to Carson Durst's testimony?
I can tell you that Carson Durst never outwardly claimed Drufo was dangerous until after Durst left our company and joined Terra Greenery, our biggest competitor.
Carson Durst accused you and Lush Fertilizer of intentionally ignoring information that showed Drufo was dangerous?
Like I said, that's simply just not true. The information we had did not suggest that Drufo was cancer causing.
Thank you. No further questions.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please proceed.
Like Doncourt, you said that baking your fertilizer was costly, correct?
Yes, baking would limit profits.
In what way?
I understand that it was cost analyses were done to study the long-term profit deficits of baking versus non-baking. I understand that baking would have a profit deficit.
Would baking be the only way to alleviate the potential carcinogenicity of your product?
I don't believe I'm qualified to say that baking is the only way to eliminate carcinogens.
Is it one of the ways to eliminate carcinogenicity of your product?
I understand that it is a potential way to do so.
Mr. Doncourt, do you have a copy of Exhibit 8 near you?
I do have a copy of Exhibit 8.
Do you believe that there's a fair and unmarked copy of the exhibit?
Could you restate that, please? I couldn't hear.
Well, sorry. Do you believe that it is a fair and unmarked copy of the exhibit?
I do believe so, yes.
Your Honor, if we may share our screen with Exhibit 8, we would like to offer into evidence as well.
Well, do you have a copy of Exhibit 8? in front of you or available to you?
I
Mr.
do.
Davenport?
I do.
Okay. Are you going to offer it as evidence, counsel?
Yes, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Exhibit 8 is admitted into evidence for all purposes. And you may screen share it now if you'd like.
Okay, if you'll give me one moment, thank you. Mr. Doncourt, what is this document?
The document before us is a cost analysis of baking versus non-baking of Drufo and how that would affect sales on a yearly basis.
Thank you. If you'll look to the baking costs highlighted, is it accurate to say that your baking costs total to around $2.6 million?
I believe that is right.
And if we look at your net profit, which is right here, is it also accurate to say that that totals to around $19 million?
That is correct.
And $2 million is only 13% of 19 million, correct?
That is correct.
So it only costs 13% out of 100% of your profits to bake Drufo.
That is correct, but it is still a 13% loss.
So if you bake Drufo by spending 13% of your profits, would this potentially prevent your customers from being potentially harmed by a potentially carcinogenic product?
I understand that baking is a potential way to eliminate the threat of carcinogens. However, I also understand that there was no substantiated evidence to validate, like, there was not enough evidence to warrant baking on this scale.
I'm sorry, Mr. Donford, is that a yes or no question?
Could you restate it, please?
I said, so if you bake Drufo by spending 13% of your profits, would this potentially prevent your customers from being harmed by a risk of carcinogenicity?
Sure, yes.
In your affidavit on lines 108 to 109, you state that you use that 13% to pay capitalists to provide your company with seed funds, correct?
Could you please restate that? I couldn't hear. Sorry.
In lines 108 to 109 of your affidavit, you state that that percentage of your earnings goes to paying capitalists who helped provide your company with seed funds in its early years, correct?
Well, of course. I mean, we have to divert and use some of our funds for those companies, or else we would not be able to operate.
So this money could have gone into enhancing the safety of your customers and preventing potential risk?
It could have.
Thank you. But instead you use the money to pay those who provided your company with seed funds, as well as your debt.
I believe that paying the seed companies is necessary for our organization to operate.
But it could have gone into enhancing the safety of your customers potentially, correct?
It could have, but that is not the only funds we set aside for that purpose. We do set funds aside for protecting our customers.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Doncourt. Defendant, please call your next witness.
The defense calls Skylar Weirs. May I proceed, Your Honor?
Please proceed.
Thank you. Ms. Weirs, can you state your full name and spell your last name for the record?
Skylar Weirs, Weirs.
Thank you. Ms. Weirs, what do you currently do?
I'm an investigative journalist for the magazine The Rationalist.
Can you tell us a little bit about The Rationalist?
It is a quarterly science education and science advocacy magazine published by the Rationalist Society, a nonprofit organization devoted to making scientific findings accessible to the public and combating the spread of misinformation.
What type of articles do you mostly write for The Rationalist?
I primarily write articles relating to agriculture and agritech.
Could the witness please speak up? I'm having difficulty hearing the witness.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I'll ask the question again. What type of research, sorry, getting ahead of myself. What type of articles do you write for The Rationalist?
I primarily write articles relating to agriculture and agritech.
When you're writing these articles, what does your research process look like?
For the series of articles I wrote about agritech, I spent almost a year reviewing publications issued by various agritech companies. Then I tracked down and reviewed the research studies referenced in those publications. I also tracked down a wealth of information maintained by the United States Department of Agriculture and the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture. This process was aided in my knowledge of statistics built up over my journalistic career.
Thank you. Your Honor, the defense moves to tender Ms. Weirs as an expert in agriculture and agritech.
Any objection?
A brief voir dire, Your Honor.
Please proceed.
Ms. Weirs, you don't currently hold a college degree, is that correct?
That is correct.
In fact, you didn't even attend college.
I did not.
Now, Ms. Weirs, you've only been doing research on Drufo for a year. Is that correct?
Yes.
You don't have any hands-on experience working with the chemical?
No, I do not.
You've never conducted any studies?
I did not, but I reviewed studies done by other people.
Well, Ms. Weirs, you review first-hand sources, is that correct?
Yes.
Meaning all of your knowledge is secondhand.
I suppose so. Yes.
Now, Ms. Weirs, you haven't completed any formal training, is that correct?
That is correct.
You don't have any certifications?
No.
Your Honor, I admit to Ms. Weirs being admitted as an expert under the field of agriculture, as she has not demonstrated the requisite education, training, and skills to be entered as an expert.
Response?
Your Honor, if I may direct your attention to the pre-trial ruling, there you'll find that Ms. Weirs is more than qualified or should be admitted as an expert if we can prove that she has more knowledge than the average juror, which I feel we have more than met.
Reply.
Your Honor, Skylar Weirs has barely demonstrated that she has the requisite knowledge, but has not demonstrated education, training, or skills to be admitted as an expert. She's in no way qualified to make claims about the safety of Drufo.
The objection is overruled. This witness has met the standards established by the pre-ruling order, and that is binding on this court at this time. This witness is deemed qualified as an expert in agriculture and agritech and may offer opinion evidence pursuant to Rule 702.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, can you discuss some safety concerns associated with all types of fertilizer?
Long grass requires nitrogen in soil in order to live. However, because of the widespread use of herbicides to kill weeds that naturally deposit nitrogen in soil, companies now replace depleted nitrogen with synthetic nitrogen. As a soluble substance, nitrogen soaks deeply into the soil after a rainstorm or after irrigation, reaching groundwater and nearby wells. Nitrogen is known to
contribute to various types of cancer, adverse reproductive outcomes, especially neural tube defects, diabetes, and thyroid conditions. Synthetic nitrogen from fertilizers is also horrible for the environment. The ecological effects of nitrogen runoff are well known and include dead zones in lakes and oceans.
Thank you, Ms. Weirs. Ms. Weirs, from your research, can you comment about what you found that sets Lush fertilizer apart from other fertilizers?
Drufo bonds to both the grass and Lush fertilizer's active ingredients, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, and prevents these active ingredients from being washed away as quickly, which means that these chemicals do not need to be applied nearly as often to achieve optimum yield. Drufo only needs to be applied once or twice a year. Other grass fertilizers needs to be applied 5 to 6 times per year to achieve the same nitrogen penetration. Because Drufo reduces the solubility of Lush fertilizer, the nitrogen in this product is also less likely to contaminate groundwater and waterways. Drufo is also an effective pesticide, which means that there is no need for Lush fertilizer to add pesticides like glyphosate and arsenic. While the research on whether Drufo causes cancers like non-Hodgkin lymphoma is inconclusive at best, there's a much clearer causal link between these other pesticides and cancer. The
Looks like Lily is frozen on both ends.
Appears that way. Is there anything that that you can do about that?
The best thing I could do is shut off their cameras and hope that it gives them a better bandwidth, but that would be shutting off their cameras.
Well, it looks like you're
We're
back.
back. Yep.
Yeah, I apologize. We've been disconnected.
Okay, I don't know if the timers turned off their timers, timekeepers turned off their timers during that interlude, but if you did, I guess please add, say, 45 seconds back into your timers because of that technical glitch. I believe that the witness was about to or in the process of answering a question when things froze up. But why don't you, counsel, re-ask the last question you asked before the glitch, and we'll go from there.
Sure, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, can you tell us what sets Drufo and Lush fertilizer apart from other fertilizers?
Drufo bonds to both the grass and Lush fertilizer's active ingredients, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, and prevents these active ingredients from being washed away as quickly, which means these chemicals do not need to be applied nearly as often to achieve optimum yield. Drufo only needs to be applied once or twice a year. Other grass fertilizers needs to be applied 5 to 6 times per year to achieve the same nitrogen penetration. Because Drufo reduces the solubility of the Lush fertilizer, the nitrogen in this product is also less likely to contaminate groundwater and waterways. Drufo is also an effective pesticide, which means there is no need for Lush fertilizer to add pesticides like glyphosate. Yeah.
Your Honor, was the witness able to finish her response? I'm having connectivity issues.
I would say she did not complete it,
Okay.
no.
Okay.
Sorry, I was also having trouble connecting. Should I continue or?
Yeah, go ahead and just repeat your answer if you're okay with that, Ms. Weirs.
Yes. The whole answer?
Just for safekeeping, yeah.
Okay. Drufo bonds to both the grass and lush fertilizer's active ingredients, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, and prevents these active ingredients from being washed away as quickly, which means that these chemicals do not need to be applied nearly as often to achieve optimum yield. Drufo only needs to be applied once or twice a year. Other grass fertilizers needs to be applied 5 to 6 times per year to achieve the same nitrogen penetration. Because Drufo reduces the solubility of lush fertilizer, the nitrogen in this product is also less likely to contaminate groundwater and waterways. Drufo is also an effective pesticide, which means there is no need for a lush fertilizer to add pesticides like glyphosate and arsenic. While the research on whether Drufo causes cancers like non-Hodgkin lymphoma is inconclusive at best, there is a much clearer causal link between these other pesticides and cancer. The International Agency for Research on Cancer categorizes arsenic as a carcinogen for humans, and it categorizes glyphosate as a possible carcinogen.
Thank you for your patience, Ms. Weirs. Can you tell us what you've learned about Drufo's effects on humans?
I did not find evidence linking Drufo and cancer with any level of certainty. Use of Drufo actually protects customers by eliminating exposure to these recognized carcinogens.
Thank you. Ms. Weirs, there have been and likely will be more questions about your motivation for testifying today. Can you speak a little about why you're here?
I love my twin and I'm devastated about what's happened to them, but Dakota is blaming the one product that was designed to reduce the need for continued and repeated exposure to harmful chemicals. If Haven Landscaping didn't use lush fertilizer, Dakota might have been exposed to synthetic nitrogen far more often. I know it's easy for me to point fingers, but if you ask me, this is an issue of poor training by the owner of Haven Landscaping. No company should allow its teenage employees to work with known harmful chemicals on a regular basis without wearing proper protective gear, or at least a mask and gloves. I want justice for Dakota as much as the rest of my family, but Dakota is going after their own company.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Ms. Weirs, nitrogen in fertilizers causes cancer, is that correct?
Yes.
And lush fertilizer contains nitrogen?
Yes.
All right, now moving on. By your own definition, pesticides are poisonous, correct?
To unwanted organisms, yes.
And Drufo is a pesticide.
Yes.
And lush fertilizer contains Drufo?
That is correct.
Meaning that anyone who uses lush fertilizer is being poisoned.
No, I wouldn't say that.
Ms. Weirs, Drufo, a pesticide. Ms. Weirs, all right, moving on. Ms. Weirs, you've done research about the dangers of Drufo, correct?
Yes, I have done research on Drufo.
You found that that research was inconclusive regarding its potential carcinogen effects.
Yeah.
Meaning there still is a chance that Drufo causes cancer?
Yes, but there are other chemicals in fertilizers that are more likely to cause cancer or confirmed to cause cancer.
Ms. Weirs, is that a yes?
Yes.
All right, well, I'd like to talk a little bit about your writing career now. So, Ms. Weirs, your writing generates income, is that correct?
Yes.
But it isn't the only thing that generates income.
Objection, Your Honor. Ms. Weir's financial status has nothing to do with the bearing on this case.
Your
Sorry, I jumped the gun. I'm objecting to relevancy.
All right, thank you.
Sorry about that.
Response?
Your Honor, Ms. Weirs' financial status is relevant as it is laying foundation for a potential motive for testifying here today.
Reply?
Your Honor, Ms. Weirs has already specifically told us her motivation for testifying today, and it had nothing to do with her financial status.
Objection is overruled. this is a relevant inquiry.
Right. Now, to reiterate my question, Ms. Weirs, your writing isn't the only thing that generates income, correct?
Correct.
You still need to work at Applebee's to make some money.
Yes.
Now, Ms. Weirs, you'd like for your writing to generate income.
I would. My writing career has started to kick off recently.
Now, Ms. Weirs, you're here testifying for Lush Fertilizer, is that correct?
Yes.
You're testifying in front of the CEO of Lush Fertilizer.
Yes.
And you're aware that the CEO is listening to every word of praise that you're giving his product today.
Sure.
Well, I'd like to talk a little bit about why you're here today, Ms. Weirs. You write articles praising Lush Fertilizer, is that correct?
No, I wouldn't say praising exactly.
So, Ms. Weirs, you write articles advocating for Lush Fertilizer then, correct?
I wouldn't say I'm advocating for Lush Fertilizer. And
Ms. Weirs, articles, well, Ms. Weirs, you believe that Lush Fertilizer is a revolutionary product, correct?
yes, I do.
And
I believe it is much safer than other fertilizers.
And Ms. Weirs, you write articles talking about how revolutionary and how advanced Lush Fertilizer is, correct?
Correct.
So, Ms. Weirs, it is fair to say that you write advocating for them.
I guess so.
All right. Now, if Drufel was proven to be dangerous today in court, you'd be promoting a dangerous product, correct?
Yes.
Not only that, but you'd be promoting a product that harmed your twin brother, Dakota, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. This is hearsay.
Response?
Your Honor, I'm not sure how this is hearsay as I'm not providing any statements that have been said out of court.
Reply?
Your Honor, these questions hinge on the assumption of Lush Fertilizer's guilt and negligence, and that it is a carcinogen, which is not something that has been established yet.
Is that a hearsay objection?
Yes.
Overruled. Please proceed.
To reiterate my previous question, Ms. Weirs, if Drufel was proven to be dangerous today, you'd be promoting a product that harmed your twin brother, Dakota. Yes.
I don't believe it is dangerous, but yes.
No further questions then, Your Honor.
Redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please proceed.
Thank you. Ms. Weirs, in your direct examination, when you said that arsenic was a known carcinogen and that it is also used as a pesticide, were you generalizing and saying all pesticides are carcinogens?
No.
Objection, Your Honor, outside scope.
Response?
This question is in response to a question directly asked in the cross-examination when the plaintiff implied that Ms. Weirs was saying all pesticides were carcinogens, which included Drufo, as it acts essentially as a pesticide.
Reply?
Your Honor, the question opposing counsel asked was in regards to arsenic, which was not mentioned in my cross-examination.
Well, I don't remember it being mentioned either. I think the question was more general than that. But I'm going to overrule the objection. And if you could rephrase it, counsel, so that it does comport with the questioning that went on during cross-examination.
Okay, Your Honor.
Please
I can do that.
do so.
Ms. Weirs, would you say that all pesticides are carcinogens or specific pesticides are carcinogens?
Specific pesticides have been proven to be carcinogens or possible carcinogens.
Thank you. Would you also say that you have to be exposed to enough synthetic nitrogen for it to be a carcinogen, or does any amount qualify as a carcinogen?
There is a certain amount, I would say.
Is that amount less, or sorry, is there less synthetic nitrogen in Lush fertilizer compared to other fertilizers?
Yes, Lush fertilizer prevents the consumers from being exposed to as much of the synthetic nitrogen as other fertilizers.
I'd also like to touch one more time about your income and the motivation for appearing here today. Are you giving your testimony with the hopes that you will be either paid by Blake Doncourt or receive more work as a result?
No, I am testifying because I believe Dakota is blaming the wrong company.
Thank you, Ms. Weirs. No further questions.
All right, thank you. Defense, do you have any further witnesses?
No further witnesses, Your Honor.
Defense rests.
Yes, Your Honor, the defense rests.
All right, thank you. Plaintiff, are you ready to proceed with closing argument?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please do so.
Okay. As the plaintiff, we have to prove to you three things. Those are causation, negligence, and damages. As we all can agree, Dakota Weirs has suffered damages that are beyond repair, such as his ability to play the piano, his physical state, which continues to plague him, his ability to go to a prestigious university to pursue a passion that he adored so dearly. He even has rifts between his family members, one of which being his closest family member, his twin, Skylar. All because Lush failed to warn of the dangers that their product would cause. This is an example of negligence. You see, Lush did their own study and their own research, but what did they do? Kept it under wraps. Dr. Rogers' study, as we've heard, found that there was a strong link between Drufo and carcinogenicity. This demonstrates causation. The only thing that they could do was produce a warning label, and they did. And it was advertising protective clothing for the user to do while operating this product. But this was a mere suggestion. This suggestion did not warn of Dakota Weirs having his career upended as a youth. This did not warn him that he would have physical pain that would continue to affect him for the rest of his life. This did not warn him that he would have economic damages, familial rifts, and worst of all, be unable to pursue something that he loved. The only thing they could do as well was to bake their product, but they didn't. Despite 13% being a less than significant profit loss, as Blake Doncourt stated, as money was not an issue for him, for Lush. It doesn't matter whether they were financially capable or not, however, they chose not to bake their product to save extra money. 13% should have gone into enhancing the safety of customers, and it did not. If Lush truly valued their customers' lives, they would have baked their product, and whether or not they were financially capable is irrelevant. If they truly believed that their customers' lives were worth more than 13%, they would have baked their product. Lush placed a potentially carcinogenic product into the hands of a young person who was expected to use the product in a reasonable manner. However, we know that Dakota did not wear protective clothing, but it was an incredibly hot summer. The summers were incredibly hot and nearly unbearable for a 14-year-old to bear. We ask you to find Lush liable and reward Dakota Weirs with $2.6 million, the same amount that Lush could have used to bake their product, but did not. Thank you very much, Your Honor.
Defense, closing argument,
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
you may.
Thank you. What has happened to Dakota Weirs was a tragedy, but Lush Fertilizer isn't to blame. Miss Weirs is undoubtedly a victim. Of course, they're a victim of cancer, and they've lost a great deal to the disease, but they're also a victim of bad actors. What you've heard in this case makes it clear that stricken with grief and looking someone to blame for the tragedy, Miss Weirs was pointed in the direction of Lush Fertilizer, a company with a long history of environmental and humanitarian work by individuals that have a vested financial interest in Lush's failure. The manipulation of Miss Weirs is clear to see, even her own twin, who despite attacks from the plaintiff has been recognized by this court as an expert, has come here today to testify against the people that are attempting to enrich themselves off the backs of the tragedy that befell her twin. It is incredibly sad what has happened to Miss Weirs, but the facts of the case clearly showed they were unable to meet their burden. The reason we are here today is so people can profit, not get justice. Sad it is to say, Miss Weirs isn't blameless. For Lush Fertilizer to be negligent, Miss Weirs had to have used the product in a manner reasonable people will. A reasonable person would. A reasonable person might follow the advice on warning labels and the advice of scientists and the advice of their employer to use protective equipment while handling chemicals. But Miss Weirs didn't do this. Miss Weirs also used a wide array of possibly carcinogenic chemicals during their career in landscaping and lawn care. But they've provided no evidence that Lush Fertilizer is the one to blame for their illness. Based on these facts alone, it's easy to see that Miss Weirs' case does not meet the burden of neglect. Anyone could have told Miss Weirs this, but instead she was led into taking legal action by people looking to profit. One of these people is Miss Durst. Miss Durst is the lead product developer at a rival company. They have a vested financial interest in seeing the product that they can't make something as good as fail and be taken off the market. They also harbor resentment towards Blake Doncourt when he failed to intervene in their failings as an employee. So of course, someone like Carson Durst would look to see Lush Fertilizer fail. They have a personal interest in it, and they have a financial interest in it. The other of the plaintiff's witnesses is Dr. Rogers. Unlike Mr. Durst, Dr. Rogers is most certainly qualified in this area. He has numerous degrees and is currently employed by a very prestigious university. However, in their study that they're using as their basis today, they didn't receive support or oversight from this university. They operated by themselves. And as a result, they made a bad study using sloppy science, and they've come here today presenting it as fact. The reason they're doing this is so they can continue to work as a paid expert in further cases involving compensation for people with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Dr. Rogers' knowledge on this subject is still unimpeachable, however, and even they agree that when you utilize lawn care products and chemicals, you should be wearing protective equipment. But nevertheless, this is something that Miss Weirs did not do. It is clear as day to see why we're here when you examine the facts of this case. It has nothing to do with Miss Weirs' illness. It only has to do with money and the people who are looking to profit off the failings of Lush Fertilizer. Once again, it is a tragedy what's happened to Miss Weirs, but Lush Fertilizer isn't to blame. Thank you, Your Honor.
Plaintiff, do you care to offer a rebuttal with any time you have left?
Yes, Your Honor.
How much time, can one of the timekeepers tell us how much time is left?
I have 2 minutes, 33 seconds for rebuttal.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Your Honor, as the defense closing stated, there are plenty of people who are willing to profit in this case and prioritize profits over people. That is Lush Fertilizer and Blake Doncourt. If he truly valued his customers, if he truly valued the potential, if he truly valued enhancing their safety, this would not be here today. If he prioritized people over profits, he would, Dakota Weirs would not be suffering. If Blake Doncourt did not prioritize money over the people that are suffering, if Blake Doncourt did not prioritize his profits over his customers, it would not be here. So in conclusion, we urge you to prioritize the health of young people and the health of Dakota Weirs. We ask you to find Lush liable and reward Dakota Weirs with the money that could have been used to keep him and people like him safe while operating and using products that they were expected to use in a reasonable manner. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. That concludes this presentation. While the scoring panelists are finishing up their work, I will tell you that usually during this immediate post-hearing phase, if we were doing this live, I would ask the gallery members to stand up, and if they don't do it spontaneously, to give a round of applause to the student participants. And so I hope that the gallery, I wish there was a way I could make that happen by Zoom. There may be, but I'm unaware of it. But anyway, I do hope that the gallery expresses its appreciation to this presentation in that way. The other thing I ask people to do at this stage is I ask the student participants to stand up and turn around and face the gallery and give the gallery a round of applause. And it's kind of hokey, but I do it because, much for the same reason that I'm still a volunteer, I continue to volunteer. This is a great program. I believe in it, and I know because I've participated in it, how much hard work goes into it by the students. And what's often ignored is the dedication and the investment that the support people for the students, their parents, their friends, their relatives, their siblings, put into this as well. And I think the round of applause is I try to have that as an indication of the students' appreciation of the gallery's support and participation in this. And from a personal standpoint, I appreciate not only the hard work and the quality of the performance by the students, but also the support that they get to make that hard work possible and probably more fruitful as a result of that support. So thank you to the students for this presentation, and thank you to the students' support for helping to make this possible.
Thank you so much.
I hope someday we'll be back live so I can do all that without having to explain it. But in any case, I hope you indulge me in expressing my gratitude, not only to the students, but to the support people.
Thank you so much.
Okay, when the panelists have finished their work and actually submitted, all three of them have submitted their score sheets, we can have a brief critique session if the students would like it. And if the panel, the scoring panelists are willing to provide some comments at this point. I would urge you to, and I would urge the students to listen. But we need to keep it brief. 1 or 2 minutes per panelist if possible. And then I may have some comments of my own, which I hope will be equally brief. But let's wait. Josh, I see you probably submitted yours. Is that correct?
Yeah, I submitted, and I'll just wait for the other panelists, I guess.
Yes, we have to wait for all three of them to be submitted. Avery?
Yes, mine are submitted as well. Thank you.
Okay.
Mine are submitted also.
Okay. Courtroom monitor, can you confirm that, please? And then we'll go forward with the critiques.
Yes, I'm waiting on verification of one more. Judge, I think you can go ahead and start discussion. It might just be that somebody missed. Oh, nope, we got the verification. You're good to go.
Okay. Josh, why don't we start with you?
Sure, I'll try to be brief and I won't take time for each individual participant. I was just saying in general, everything was great. This was really difficult. I thought it was very close, a lot of great performances. I'll just kind of get categories on openings. Assume the jury knows nothing, has no clue about what your case is about. So try to explain the nature of the case, just the basic nature and theory of liability, at least early on, ideally within the first 30 seconds. Slow down, so take your time on directs and redirects and perhaps some crosses. This is something I still do, and I've taken, hundreds of depositions. I've tried dozens of cases, but when the witness finishes answering, you say, okay, or all right. I still do it. It's very hard to stop doing that, but try to be conscious of that because that will help you with your scoring. Don't give up redirect. I mean, I don't know whether people were out of time unless you are really confident that the cross did not land and was not effective, which was not the case today. Always take that opportunity to do redirect at least 1 or 2 questions. Some people did a really strong job of doing that on cross. Just remember, just maybe lead more and make your questions more short and succinct and direct, and don't give the witness the opportunity to play around with their answers. So really try to lock them in with short leading questions. And that's basically the general comments. I thought some of the witness performances were outstanding, and excellent job to all of you. Congratulations and good luck going forward.
Avery?
Yeah, I would echo what Josh said, and that great job to everyone. It was really, really fun to watch, and I can tell how much time and effort everyone put in to prepare. And you all really seemed like experts on this kind of complicated issue involving a lot of science, and explained it in a way that someone that doesn't do science, as I'm a lawyer, really, really made a lot of sense. Kind of some more constructive feedback. I would agree about slowing down. When it was slower, it just grabs the audience's attention more, and kind of allows us to process each good point that you're all making, and also kind of using a loud, clear tone. I know that especially in some of the opening statements, some were kind of a little bit louder and kind of more impassioned, and those are the ones that really, I think, grabs everyone's attention. And even if each kind of side is equally making good points, kind of the tone of voice can make a big impact as well. And I think that using themes like profits over people, like things like that, that kind of stay with you throughout the whole case, those can be impactful as well. And then it's really helpful to kind of also tie it into the closing argument. So then there's kind of cohesiveness from the opening of the case to the close. As far as cross-examination, a lot of you did a really great job in not letting the witnesses not answer the question. I could tell you all worked hard at that you're like, was that yes or no? And you weren't afraid to kind of keep making sure that you locked them into the answer. So I think that don't be afraid to do that, because, you want them to answer the question in a yes or no manner. So feel free to kind of keep on doing that. I still use that today, because even today witnesses, they'll, try to go all types of ways. So I think kind of that was great that I noticed you all doing that already. Overall, great job. Excited to see what you all do. And it was really fun to watch. So congrats to everyone.
Michael?
Yes, again, I echo the other panelists' praise of the level of preparation and knowledge of the case by everybody. And I'm going to take a little different approach and actually kind of briskly go through with the comments that I made as I was listening to each of the components here. Plaintiff's opening, good theme. You're looking at the jury. That was good. You seem natural in doing that. A little argumentative, but that's okay. I've been accused of being argumentative in my opening statements, and that's what I'm trying to do. Defense opening, you started off, seemed like you were reading a little bit. Try to vary from a monotone. I think we've said that. Try to emphasize, punctuate your points, your key points there. But a good preview of the testimony, witness by witness. You did that in your opening. In the direct examination, witness one, good redirect. I echo Josh's point that redirect is a good weapon. You get the chance to hear the jury here, or the judge, here's the key points, or you get to emphasize some of the key points or respond to some of the weaknesses. So use that opportunity for redirect. A good form of open-ended questions there on your direct of witness one. Cross of witness one, good point that the boss told him to use the protective equipment. Sometimes a little quick, try to draw it out, as Avery said, try to, I think both of us, all three of us would say, draw it out, emphasize the points, that and don't be too shy about, don't look like you're reading. Now, this is a problem I saw with not just with some of the witnesses. You look like you were just reading, and you want to avoid that. I know it's difficult, but you don't want to just read from something. Let's see, I don't want to go over too much that's been gone over by other people. On cross-examination, don't just agree on cross-examination with what, I liked it when some of the witnesses had some passion and they refused to just agree. There are times when you have to agree on cross, but don't just agree. If there's a point there where you have an opportunity to dispute something. Direct examination, witness two, good form, natural feeling, clear questions, and a proper foundation for exhibit three. Cross of witness two, Durst, Bennett Lane, good concise objections to exhibits and expert qualifications, pointed sharp questions on cross-examination, and a good wrap-up at the end. You want to try to end, especially with the jury, you want to try to end with a strong point. You don't want to just trail off at the end on a cross-examination. The third witness, Dr. Casey Rogers, you resisted questions as appropriate on cross. I like that you didn't just agree, you resisted some of those questions on cross. Direct exam, witness three, Malia Walker, good sequential logical development with open-ended questions. Redirect, you had the right idea, but I didn't really see a clear point to it. The cross-exam, witness three, don't look like you're reading questions. They were good questions, though. They were good questions, but project your voice too. Try to project your voice a little bit. I know it's difficult in Zoom. And good development of questions. Moving on to subjects. I like the way you developed the question there and then moved on to the next subject. Defense, I thought the first defense witness, you started off like reading a little too much, but you got better as you went, more comfortable at the end, and you had some passion at the end. I like that. You actually were willing to battle a little bit on some of those questions. So I think it turned out well there. A good redirect. You ended strongly there. The defendants, first witness there on redirect. You ended that nicely. And then I'm going to jump to the second witness. Good, logical, concise development, and again, you should use redirect to refocus on the point. The cross was a good presentation, clear, direct questions, good use of the exhibit. And the second witness, strong witness. I thought it was really a great witness, Giovanni. Great witness there of Doncourt. You're a strong witness on direct, sounded credible and firm, and you held up. You were willing to dispute points that were worth disputing there. The third witness on direct, Lane Bennett, good form, clear questions. You anticipated the attack on the witness, which I like to do sometimes, and you tried to kind of anticipate that rather than just waiting for that attack on cross-examination. And a good pointed response on redirect there. But one thing is when a witness is going on with a long narrative, this is generally good. Try to break it up into components. Don't just let the witness go on with a lengthy narrative there. And finally, don't just read from, this is not reference to this particular examination, but being careful. Don't just read from something on direct as a witness. You're expert witnesses, and you want to, but you got good on cross there because you were the witness, the third witness there, the expert Skylar Weirs. You were better on cross because you were responding individually to questions. You weren't just reading something on direct. So I felt you did well on cross there by responding and thinking individually. And good closings, both of you, good closings. And Malia, you stand up, you have a good, you're talking to the jury. That's what you want to do. And of course, Bennett, you attacking the weaknesses of each of the plaintiff's witnesses issue by issue. So all in all, an excellent performance by everybody. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, all three of you. Excellent comments, and I agree with them. I am going to resist taking the approach that Michael did. I'd like not to take that much time, but I would like to emphasize one part of it that Michael did mention, and that is the closings. I thought it was excellent on both sides, and particularly for Bennett. I think you did a great job, not just in the substance of your closing, but your approach. You were confident, you were assertive, and you have some emotion. And I think that's appropriate because part of what you had to do here is you have a really sympathetic opposing party. The plaintiff is a very sympathetic person here. Poor Dakota, just trying to make a buck to be able to go to school and support what she wanted to do, and she gets sick for it. And so you attacked, as Michael said, you did attack Carson Durst and Dr. Casey. And you did that very well, very aggressive, very assertive, attacking their credibility because of their personal interest in the outcome. They have different personal interests, but that's very, very telling. It can be to a jury. And those were the two main witnesses. At the same time, you did not attack Dakota. You mentioned some things about Dakota, but you did not attack her with the same vigor, or that witness, the plaintiff, with the same vigor that you did the other two witnesses. Very good, very well done. And I thought it was interesting also, the sort of mirror images from your arguments as to who it was that was out for the bucks in this lawsuit. Was it the plaintiff, according to the defense, who was looking for profit, not justice? And as far as the plaintiff is concerned, it was the defendant, Lush, who was putting profit over people. And I just thought, I don't know if that was purposeful or not, but I thought it was effective to have that sort of point counterpoint aspect of it. So good job, particularly in the closings, but also very good in the rest of the presentations. And again, I thank you for the obvious preparation for this and the hard work. And I also thank your coaches particularly, but also your parents and your other relatives and your friends who support you. So with that, we're done. You can exhale, you can relax. And I think you made this very enjoyable for me. And thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you so
Teams,
much.
round 4 will
Thank you.
resume at 4:30. Again, round 4 will resume at 4:30.
Great job,
Thanks for
everyone.
everybody. Yeah, excellent job.
Congrats.